Hey everybody, this is Manny Faces, producer and host of Newsbeat, where we mix hard-hitting journalism about social justice and civil liberties issues with music and original hip-hop lyrics by some of the best independent artists out there in the game today. We like to say we're like 60 Minutes and Hamilton had a podcast baby, or 60 Minutes and Black Thought had a podcast baby, or 60 Minutes and Public Enemy had a podcast baby. So it's a mixed media extravaganza that we put forth in our Newsbeat podcast. If you follow us, you've heard hopefully our full episodes. This is BackBeat. BackBeat, we go a little bit behind the scenes, go in depth, and take a little bit deeper dive into the contents of the previous episode. The episode we're talking about is our most recent. It's called Youth Prisons, Juvenile Detention's Racial Disparity, Rampant Violence, and Lasting Damage. So before we get into that, again, my name is Manny Faces, and I invite you to subscribe to our podcast, Newsbeat, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. We're on, of course, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, all of the places. We're also on the web at usnewsbeat.com, and there you can find a full cover story and more resources that go with each and every episode, plus information about us, all of the voices and experts and authors and academics and activists who we interview for each episode, and our very special guest artists, including our 2017-2018 artist in residence, Mr. Silent Night, and the others who have appeared on all of our episodes. Also on our website, a very special section that we want you to check out is our support page. We do take outside donations to try to help us continue to bring these important social justice issues to light and pay these fantastic artists that intersperse their talent throughout our episodes with compelling and really mind-numbingly smart hip-hop commentary in a very unique way that only we at Newsbeat can do. So hit us up, usnewsbeat.com/support, and help us help them help you learn about these incredible issues. I'm joined as I am with each BackBeat episode by our editor-in-chief, Mr. Chris Twarowski.
What up, Manny?
And we are not joined this time, as we normally are in every BackBeat episode, by our managing editor, Mr. Rashid Mian.
And it feels weird.
It does feel weird. Who's going to get really, really mad and pound the table and scream at the injustices that are peppered throughout our existence?
We can take turns.
We'll have to do it. We want to give a special shout out to Rashid and Jen Mian. Rashid is out on paternity leave because he is a new Papa. So congratulations to the Mian family, and you guys take as long as you need. Rashid will be here when you get back. Congratulations once again. We love y'all. So in the meantime, Chris and I, we're going to hold it down. We're going to talk about youth prisons. We're going to talk about real quick who you heard in the last episode. Big shout out to our special guest musical artist for this past episode, Napoleon the Legend, a very, very fine lyricist, a very fine human. You can find a lot of his work online as well. Just came out with a new mixtape in his mixtape series. It's called Steal This Mixtape 3. You want to check him out. Napoleon da Legend, D-A. Napoleon the Legend. That's the man. That's the one who you heard spit on this last episode. And Chris, as you usually do, tell us about the other voices, the expert voices that we had on this episode called Youth Prisons.
Yeah, so we spoke with Mishi Faruqi, the National Field Director of the nonprofit Youth First Initiative. We also spoke with Hernan Carvente Martinez from Youth First. He's the National Youth Partnership Strategist. And we also spoke with James Williams, the Juvenile Justice Field Organizer at New Jersey Institute for Social Justice.
Right, indeed. And Hernan was also was formerly incarcerated in a youth prison in New York State.
Right. I mean, his insight to the episode, if you haven't listened to it yet, please do, is just insanely powerful.
Right. So now, again, we assume you know to go listen to the episode before you listen to the BackBeat. It's sort of like... spoiler alert, we obviously talk about the episode in depth, but the power of the episode is the episode. So please do check that out if you haven't. We'll wait. Great. Glad you're back.
This guy. Here he is.
I did find it to be, as always, as we do, we bring these issues to light in a very compelling manner. And Hernan's we talk about being here behind the scenes. His behind the scenes insight was pretty crazy. Rashid normally gives us some of the numbers. You're going to work the numbers in his stead, Chris. Why don't you give us and our listeners a quick recap of the the numbers behind this issue? That's obviously why this issue is so pernicious.
Yeah. So on any given day, there's about 50,000 young people incarcerated in the United States.
Right.
And, just the subject here, I think, says it all. Youth prisons.
Right.
Prison for children, basically, is what we're talking about here.
Indeed.
And, race plays an insanely critical role in youth incarceration.
As it does with most law enforcement-based things.
Children of color are incarcerated at disproportionate rates than their white counterparts.
Right.
And, here on BackBeat, we try to delve into maybe some of the sub-issues and topics that we don't get to really flesh out as much in the actual episode. And so I made a short list here of some things that I think are really, really important for you listeners to hear and know about. One is the youth incarceration of girls. When we think about youth prison, we think about prison in general. I think the average person thinks about males,
right.
Boys and men. Girls are incarcerated as well, and that rate, while the overall incarceration rate of youth has been precipitously dropping, thanks to some of the more innovative reforms that have been put in place in the last couple of years, more girls are being incarcerated, partly due to those numbers dropping.
Interesting, yeah.
And one of the biggest issues with girls being incarcerated is that there's just not a lot of alternatives available.
Right.
And girls are in this unique position where, and Mishi, ran a freight train through it for us, really eye-opening stuff, that most of the girls in youth prisons end up there because, number one, maybe they're being abused at home. A lot of times this is sexual abuse, and they act out in defense, and that's what they get arrested for. Maybe they, attack or try to physically defend themselves against their attacker, and they get arrested for that.
Right.
Secondly, these girls run away. And when they run away, obviously you don't have a lot of resources, and you do what you have to do to survive. And so these girls get picked up for what are called survival crimes.
Interesting.
Stealing food or.
Or even worse, they end up having to do things that are, unseemly to support themselves in the streets, and
which brings us to another whole element, which are some of these girls have been trafficked for sex,
right?
And oddly, bizarrely, to I guess anybody not familiar with this subject, but the judge sometimes says we need to lock her up to keep her safe. We need to keep her away from the pimp. We need to keep her away from the abusive boyfriend. So
right.
Just lock her up.
Right.
Obviously,
and that speaks to the larger
tragic
problem, obviously, we'll go into, of the fact that locking up children in these types of environments doesn't help. That's obviously what the episode really tried to emphasize. We'll get into a little bit more about the ineffectiveness of this whole thing. And that's that's like salt on the wound to say, not only are we going to, lock you up to protect you, but we're going to put you in a place that actually harms you.
Right. And what Mishi says is this is basically criminalizing gender.
Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, they're being punished because they're girls.
Right. And because of the things, unique things that they've had to go through. Right.
We talk about the youth prison system, our sources in the episode, resoundingly, you look at the stats and the system just does not work. There's nationally, there's between a 70 or 75% recidivism rate. A lot of these prisons.
Is that higher or lower than, adult prisons generally?
I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
But what I do know, what I do know is that it's a great question because, so what happens is because of those high recidivism rates, so they may be in the juvenile system when they first commit and they get put in. When they get out, they're now over 18.
Right.
And so it actually feeds. So it's this school to prison pipeline that we're talking about. You hit the nail on the head right there. So it's the recidivism rate that's helping to fuel the adult mass incarceration rate.
Right. Got
which
it.
is just, this vicious cycle of torture.
Right. And it's setting putting them in a foundation of being in the system, being in law enforcement, when, of course, and our voices eloquently spoke on this, there are alternatives. There should be alternatives. And again, you're placing children still in their formative years to some great degree in harmful environments that are not designed to rehabilitate them. They're actually designed to punish them,
right?
And aren't designed with any kind of real effort to try and get them back on their feet so they don't come back in when they turn adults.
And to your point, neurological and psychological research states that the human brain is not fully developed or doesn't even come close to sort of forming the key connections that are necessary to judge consequence, for example, reason, until the age of around 24 or 25. So right off the bat, inherently...
My brain didn't even start. My brain took a lot longer than that.
Is it still developing?
It's probably got some connections that still need to be connected. But yeah, for sure. Scientifically, like, this is clear. I mean, you figure you don't have to say this, that a 14-year-old, or 15-year-old isn't mature enough, just if you want to use that word, forget the scientific, but it's basically saying, mental maturity. And especially if they come from neighborhoods that are difficult, family situations that are difficult, poverty or low income or bad schools or whatever the case may be, or even good neighborhoods, so not these aren't the only kids that end up in juvenile prisons, youth prisons. I mean, if you look at great neighborhoods now, there's a lot of factors there. There's the opioid epidemic that's turning young people in other communities, into criminals as well. And some of them, although disproportionately not as many, tend to end up in these type of environments, again, without the infrastructure designed to help them.
Right. So you're taking a child, someone whose mind is not completely developed, and you're punishing them as an adult instead of implementing strategies and trying to heal them. So instead of healing, you're punishing. And what Mishi, Hernan, and James tell us resoundingly in the episode is that the conditions of these prisons mirror adult prisons, so you're punishing them as adult. And so think about that. You have, again, children who don't really understand consequence of their actions, don't really have the brain functions of enhanced reason to really think things out. And instead they're acting on emotion. And then you're tossing them in facilities that mirror adult prisons, which by design, I think that when you listen to the episode, what you'll come across hopefully with is, by design, these things don't work, and they're set up to further fuel this cycle of mass incarceration. So basically, the people who work in youth prisons are the same function as a correctional officer in a regular jail. Right.
As Hernan says, they have different titles, but they're essentially corrections officers.
They're not counselors.
Right.
They're officers who are there to maintain control.
Right.
Secondly, you have, a lot of these children are taken hours away. They're, incarcerated at a place hours upon hours away
from their family.
So immediately too, you talk about adolescence and development, and relationships are so crucial to that. And so you're immediately taking them away from their family and loved ones.
Right. Their foundational.
Their foundations.
Connections.
And you're putting them in a facility where, in some of these places, these kids are hogtied. These kids, the staff's almost immediate reaction is to restrain them
physically.
Yeah.
And as Hernan says, people fight back sometimes because,
especially and as Hernan said personally himself, one night he got a very upsetting phone call from his family, and he went into his cell and started trashing his cell. Right. And what is the first reaction from the staff is get in there and restrain him.
Right.
And he's going to fight back.
Yeah.
He's a testosterone fueled, at that point, I think 16-year-old, 17-year-old. What are you going to do? You're going to fight back.
Right.
No matter how old you are, somebody tries to attack you and throw you down. What are you going to do? You're going to try to fight back. And the horrors documented and so many undocumented are just,
yeah. I mean,
terrifying.
To the point, I mean, that's why there has been some work being done to reform these places, close the prisons, close these places down. I know that Mishi says that they think, the philosophy of her organization is that these youth prisons simply shouldn't exist. They shouldn't be better. They can't be reformed. That the idea
they're beyond rehabilitation
that
themselves,
they're outdated,
the entire system.
Right. That is part of a system that shouldn't be how we treat children who are offenders. And again, as Hernan, he, as being someone who had been incarcerated, committed a bad act and admitted it and said it absolutely 100%, took total ownership of that. But that he was one of the lucky ones who got through the system and came out better for it. But overall, what we want to do, what you think civilization would want to do, is find systems that actually improve these children's lives so they don't further go down this path. And to Mishi's point, these outdated systems, outdated prisons shouldn't be part of the equation.
Some of these prisons date back to the Civil War.
Right. Hundreds of years.
Yeah. And
With
James,
tactics that are pretty much,
I mean, and James Williams, I mean, what a powerful intro to this episode.
Yeah.
He talks about all the souls of these children, the screams, the torture, the anguish, the tears, chaos, basically embedded in these walls that just generations of children have been shackled in there and marched through, and their lives utterly destroyed. I mean, all the echoes of these kids' screams and thankfully, in that particular prison he was referring to, which is nicknamed Jamesburg in New Jersey, Governor Christie in January, before he left, said, we're going to close that.
Right.
We're going to close the female counterpart as well. It's not, from what I understand, it's still a big transition thing. They have to figure out what to do. But it brings us to the next point here. Not only do these things, basically destroy and break the backs and the spirit of kids who are already insanely traumatized. That, as you brought up at the beginning here, they come from possibly low-income neighborhoods that already don't have a support network and resources. And so instead of trying to help them and heal them, you're aggravating and, as Mishi says, exacerbating that trauma, whether it's mental illness or just behavioral issues. And in that vacuum of violence, what's going to happen?
Right. It ends up becoming even more embedded in you, that lifestyle, right, of violence and hopelessness.
And you just said it, and Hernan speaks to that. Some of it didn't make it in, but I want to just share with you listeners some more details of Hernan. He was incarcerated when he was 15 and I think like 4 days shy of 16 or something like that for attempted murder.
Right.
And, he also had a child on the way, and he's in there, he was a gangbanger, so, back to sort of the communities, and that's such a key part of this issue, the communities. He came from a family of Mexican descent, where what he told us was, machismo attitude and culture is very prevalent. And, he had his first sip of beer, I think, when he was 8 or something like that. By 10, he had, liquor. When he was, I think, 7 or 8, he witnessed, I won't go into too many details, but a family beating. Yeah. And he's walking around with all this anger and chaos. And he didn't have an outlet to express that, whether it be in school,
to nip that in the bud,
right, or to family members, because he, they were undocumented and he was afraid. And then so imagine being a kid and walking around with, oh God, if I tell someone what's going on in my life, my parents are going to get deported. Right. I mean, the weight that has to have on a kid.
Right. And not only in that situation, a lot of kids will be like, if I go around and tell you what my dad did to my mom or what my uncle did to my aunt or whatever the case may be, I'm going to get my ass kicked. So I'm just going to stay out of it. And they don't have any place to go. They don't have any place to talk to. They're scared.
And so what happens? You pent that stuff up, it's going to come out other ways. And what happens, he started acting out in school. Right. He joined a gang. Right. He got violent. Right. And he committed this crime, which he pled guilty for. He owned right up to this crime. And he served his time. And what he found in there, I mean, listen to the episode to hear it, but just absolutely brutal conditions, torture. And the one sort of light, and we'll come sort of full circle here to the hope part, over and over, Mishi, Hernan, and James emphasized the power of hope and the power of love. And, for Hernan, it was one singular person. He taught history in the facility. He was a former military serviceman who became a history teacher, had an infectious passion for history, and that was contagious to his students. And Hernan admits, it took a long time for him to embrace that. But this guy's name was James LeCain. Massive shout out to James LeCain. And Hernan credits him with saving his life. The only reason why Hernan said he was in front of us, in front of the microphone, in front of the Newsbeat crew, sharing this story.
As part of an organization now that's turning around and giving back to this and fighting this issue.
Countless kids, was because Mr. James LeCain instilled in him, you have value. You have worth. I believe in you.
Right.
And it takes that injection of hope and care, and really, at the essence of it is really love, to save, to heal, to turn a child around, instead of never addressing the issues,
right,
and instead throwing them in environments that only, again, exacerbate that. Once you're in there, and Hernan will be one of the first ones to say, I'm one of the lucky ones. I got out, I turned my life around, and now he's turning it around, like you said, he's giving back. It's a ripple effect. And he calls it, and it's the pay it forward.
Yeah.
And while he was in there, when he was sort of awoke to that, he then did everything he could to help other children in their, earn their GED, go into one of these college orientation type programs where, you learn the skills and some classes to prepare yourself for that, even to hold down a job, janitorial maintenance position in there. And it was those things that helped him. And it was not an easy road, as he said, when he comes out, but that helped him get to where he is now.
And I got to tell you, man, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of evidence that shows that that's what it takes. And that's all it takes sometimes, in a lot of cases, is one person. They say that people who have had, rough backgrounds or came up, through dysfunctional families or dysfunctional neighborhoods or had issues, it's that one person usually stands out, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a family member, whether it is a parent, whether it's a sibling. It's one person showing them, like you said, that there is value in who they are. As Hernan says, that helped him see that he is not the thing he did.
Right.
That he is not that thing that he did. He is a valuable person who did a bad thing, but he is not that thing.
Right. And that is one of the key goals, is to convince a child that grows up in a community that, again, doesn't have the resources, maybe is deprived of even this hope we're talking about.
Which is why they get there in the first place.
And
we have this quote, because I'm doing the next episode that's going to drop soon, and I won't go into details about it, but there's a quote in there where someone is saying that there's an idea that once they get to that age, once they get to 14, 15, 16 years old, that it's too late, to change them. That you have to get them when they're into kindergarten. You have to get them when they're young. Otherwise, they're lost cause. And I think that's what happens. I think that's what this youth prison system, this juvenile detention system, has had ingrained in them for so long, that these are incorrigibles. You can't change them. They're already on a bad path. And sure, a 16-year-old, shooting someone is on a bad path. There's no way around it. How they got there or whatever the case may be. Yes, of course, and we'll talk about if you have resources in the community, you can stop a lot of this before it happens. And that's certainly a problem to deal with, but they can change. They can be shown that there is hope. They want to. Again, you'll hear it in this next episode. You'll hear it because it's actually a little bit of a tie-in to that. But there's evidence that shows that children, teenagers that are down this path, down a bad road, that if you give them the opportunity, that you instill a little bit of hope into them and a little bit of responsibility, they will get it. They want to be better. They want to turn it around, and they just often don't think they can.
It's a great point. Hernan says one of the biggest obstacles, one of the biggest goals is, number one, you're growing up in this environment, and so you're sort of programmed that this is who you need to be, and this is you. You're going to be a gangbanger. You're going to sell drugs. You're going to rob people.
Right. Fight to survive.
You're going to fight to survive. It's turning around that mentality, because if you don't, what he had described was, you sort of begin to believe it and say, oh, okay, no, this is who I am. This is who I'm supposed to be.
Right.
And if you don't have someone or something that helps you, like gives you that revelation, then.
And there's got to be something to it, whether it's a teacher, and sometimes teachers are overworked and, not always in tune with the students. Counselors may be far and few in between. These communities don't have the resources that more wealthy communities have. Families don't have the resources that more wealthy families have. Those things, if they're not available, this will be the result.
Yeah.
And
so part of the solution,
right,
is, James Williams sums it up as building this sort of ecosystem of care. And it's not just working one-on-one with the kids. Yes, that's, in my humble opinion, probably one of the most important, but almost as equally important, it's community-based programs that also work and counsel the family.
Right.
As Hernan, I believe, was the one who stated off episode that the child is a representation of the family. and so you need to work with the family, and there's some great programs out there. In New York City, there's something called the Arches program. There's a credible messenger mentoring program where they enlist the experiences of now adults who were children and went through the system.
Right.
And sort of like Hernan, exactly what Hernan's doing,
right.
and can act as that crucial mentor,
right.
To navigate and to guide. They work with what's deemed high-risk youth. And, these programs, that one in particular, the Arches program, reduced the recidivism by 58%. I mean, that's insane. That's amazing.
Right.
58%. So instead of tossing hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars a year on one child, so just a quick little stat, filling for Rashad here, it varies from state to state, but on average, it's over $100,000 a year to incarcerate a child. In New York, it's up to $400,000. In New Jersey, I think it's $350,000 or something like that. But the whole point here is taking that money, right? And instead of throwing it on a system that not only doesn't work, but it fuels mass incarceration and all the decay and all the destruction and all the chaos that goes along with that.
Right.
And investing in a child, investing in the community, investing in the family.
Right. Stopping it before it gets to that level.
Yeah. And building these proactive, really nurturing networks.
Can you imagine if you took all the money, the hundreds of thousands, $100,000 per child, and you take the 50,000 children that are incarcerated right now, whatever 50 times 100,000 is,
mathematical.
Math is hard, but put those numbers into the communities and give them the resources they need. You would stop. You would help not only
it could. I would be hopeful, though, optimistic, and say, think about what you just said. And if you continuously did that,
you're right.
No, if you continuously did that, I mean, who knows?
Do we want that? So that's the question, society. Do you want that? Do you want to close prisons? And not because they're bad for whatever. Do you want to close prisons because you're actually stopping the ongoing problems that this country is facing from decades and centuries of oppression and one-sided double standard of justice, right? That now has created something called the school to prison pipeline. That now, when you
and for girls, abuse to prison
pipeline, a form of modern slavery, which many people are equating this to. But fix it because you can actually improve the communities and the people therein. Doesn't that just open up opportunity for everyone? When everyone has a better chance at doing great things, at going to school, at surviving these harsh upbringings, changing these communities so that that people have a better foundation. Isn't that what we want? Don't we want everyone to to have equal footing? Because the more people who have equal opportunities, the more chances we have for innovation. Or do we just want to make money by putting people in jail, by privatizing the prisons and filling the legal system and the lawyers and the judges and everyone, the bail bonds industry, all these industries that are making money off of poor people and people of color in this country by criminalizing them for being poor, for being oppressed, for starting out in conditions that the rest of us don't have to face.
And critical or key to sort of helping facilitate this upheaval, this revolution of the youth prison system that we're talking about is education, and that's one of the things we're doing here on Newsbeat, and we try to do. And it's something that Mishi states is effective. Apparently, I believe her example was a new youth prison or prison that was going to go up in Virginia, and the residents, as they often do, NIMBYism, not in my backyard, and they're yelling and screaming. Right. And she and her group were able to hold these envisioning sessions that laid out, at least one aspect of what they laid out was, there are other alternatives. Here's the costs, here's the recidivism rates. Yes, you're opposing this, but you're not really opposing it for, and so they open up these eyes, and they got to community turn around and say, you know what, yeah, we don't want this prison here still, but you know what, we don't want it here, not because the stereotypical argument against it in your backyard, but we don't want it because why are we spending our money to, as you said, just incarcerate children of color?
Right. Right.
I mean, there are better alternatives. There are better things to do here that are going to help uplift the entire community. the families, the children.
Well, listen, as we often do, we encourage our listeners and ourselves to do something, to not just learn about this stuff and sit here and be enraged, but to try to do something. So once again, shouts to our special voices in this episode, the organizations that they work for. Mishi and Hernan are with the
Youth First Initiative. Please go to their site.
Right. Check them out if you want to, find out a little bit more about what's going on, how you might be able to get involved. They're at work in several states to work to close youth prisons, but also not just close them, but find viable alternatives.
Reform. And the same with James Williams. Check out the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice.
Yes, indeed. Right there in downtown Newark, New Jersey.
Amazing stuff that
yes, indeed.
that these people are doing.
Yeah, so check them out. Of course, there's other organizations. You can deep dive into it on your own. Google's your best friend. You can find out more about these types of organizations. Get involved. Put your money, if that's the thing you do. Put your volunteerism if that's the thing you do. So you can maybe join a letter writing campaign. There's so many things you could do to make sure that this issue, which is really a travesty, once again, get involved. Here at Newsbeat, we're going to continue to bring these issues to light. We have some great episodes coming up. Please subscribe to our podcast wherever you find great podcasts. Again, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Joe's Podcast Shack.
Do they have it?
I'm not sure. But do that. Follow us, share us, subscribe, rate us, review us, smack us, flip us, rub us down. Oh, no.
Wow.
Yeah. And special thank you once again to Napoleon the Legend, who lent his amazing talent and his wordplay and his deep thoughts and perspectives on this issue. Napoleon's a great guy. Not only is an artist, but he's also an activist of sorts himself. He speaks on these issues quite often. Check out his video for Black Privilege. It's a favorite of mine. I know that he's gone off and he's done workshops in places like Rikers Island. So this was an issue that touched him personally, and we encourage him to continue up that work. You might want to reach out to him, find him online, and Team NDL on Twitter at Team NDL. And you can find him, Napoleon the Legend, anywhere you on Google and such. You'll find him in his music and his videos, and we thank him for his contribution. Once again, we're at usnewsbeat.com. Every episode, including Youth Prisons, has a full-fledged, full-resourced cover story and sort of episode notes. You find out much more about the issue at hand, including a lot of links to other articles and stats and good stuff. Once again, thanks to Rashid Mian, who usually puts those together and who is normally with us. But again, resting comfortably as well. He didn't really do much. It was all Jen. So, but tending to Jen and
he's watching news and sports right now as he tends to the babe.
He's holding the baby up in front of the news and the sports and letting her get immersed. But yeah, once again, thanks to the Mian family. We will let him tell you about it when he rejoins us himself. We won't give out too much.
And once the little one can speak,
she will be on the pod.
She'll be on the pod.
Baby girl faces and all the babies.
Child episode. We'll have the Newsbeat offspring episode.
So the junior crew.
Can they fit all your crew in here though? I don't know. This studio can only hold 20, 30 people.
Well, we'll all huddle around a microphone. My name is Manny Faces, who has many children. I'm the producer and host of Newsbeat and of BackBeat. I thank you very much once again. Hey, if you like what we're doing and you want to support our artists, go to usnewsbeat.com/support. Throw a few dollars our way. We don't even take a cut. That goes right into paying the artists. So obviously support independent music, support independent hip hop, support our good friends like Silent Night, like Liquid, like KM, like Rabbi Darkside, like Napoleon the Legend, and like Manny Faces. He actually spit on one episode.
There he is.
He was great. So if you're so inclined, swing by there and support us. Chris?
Come check out Manny and at least part of the Newsbeat crew live.
Yes, we have two upcoming.
LIU.
We got two upcoming events. First of all, this is coming out. Yes, we'll have time. Saturday, May 12th. Silent Night, our artist in residence, his band, the band called Fuse, who you heard on our season 1 finale, Why We Riot. That whole crew, every second Saturday at Sidewalk NYC down on Avenue A and 6th in the West Village /LES, New York City. The lineup, a monthly artist showcase, open jam. There's a band, there's featured artists, there's live ciphers that pop off. There's food, there's drink, there's great crowd, great people, no cover. and your man Manny Faces spinning on the ones and twos. So that's this Saturday, May 12th. And then the Newsbeat crew will be presenting a workshop at the Brooklyn campus of Long Island University, LIU Brooklyn, on Saturday, May 19th. It's a Hip Hop Hacks event. Shouts to the folks at Hip Hop Hacks. They're doing a Hip Hop Hacks music production workshop day. It's from 11 to 6. We'll be presenting there. So listen, if you're an educator, if you're a community-based organization, if you're, an organization like Hip Hop Hacks, you want us to come talk about what we do as hip hop, as social justice journalism, as the audio production behind it. These guys are seasoned journalists with hundreds and hundreds of awards under their belt. We're doing real journalism. We're mixing it with real hip hop, and we're tackling real issues. So if you want us to come talk about us, about what we do, workshop it for you, we'll do that. So once again, Saturday, May 19th at the Brooklyn campus of Long Island University in downtown Brooklyn. Newsbeat and the crew, we're presenting, I think, in the 3:30 slot, but I encourage you to come out. Hip Hop Hacks is a great event. They've done a lot of great workshops and seminars. Check them out at hiphophacks.com, and we'll see you there on May 19th.
We will come to your event. We will come to your classroom, and I know Manny will definitely come to your house party.
We'll blow your minds. All right, check it out. Once again, I'm Manny Faces for Chris Twarowski, for Rashed Mian, for our executive producer, Jed Morey, the whole Morey Creative Studios team, and Baby Girl Faces, and Baby Girl Mian, and everyone else who's listening. Thank you so much for your ears, for your time, for your support, and your love. USNewsbeat.com. We'll be back soon with a new episode. Peace.
The Newsbeat podcast is owned by Newsbeat, Inc. Visit us at usnewsbeat.com. The producer and host of Newsbeat is Manny Faces. Our editor-in-chief is Christopher Twarowski. Newsbeat's managing editor is Rashed Mian. The executive producer of Newsbeat is Jed Morey. Our podcast and website are co-produced and managed by Morey Creative Studios. Newsbeat relies on listener support and grants. Artists that appear on the podcast are compensated for original material. To support Newsbeat or contribute to our Artist-in-Residence program, visit us at usnewsbeat.com and click on Support. Subscribe to Newsbeat by Morey Creative Studios wherever you download your podcasts by searching for Newsbeat.